We're going to talk some FAU today. And FAU just made a new hire as the leader of their program. Direction has changed after the dismissal of previous head coach Tom Herman. But they got their new head man to lead their program, and that is none other than Texas Tech offensive coordinator Zach Kittley. And today we have Texas Tech insider Chris Level coming on today to talk about the hire that FAU has just made. And Chris, very much so appreciate you coming on today to talk some Zach Kittley. So first up here, Chris, how are you doing today? How's the day?
I'm doing good, my man. JJ, I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to be on talking about Coach Kittley and football and all those things. So yeah, I appreciate you including me here.
Thank you so much for coming on. And you mentioned the hiring of Coach Kittley, and it's going to be exciting to talk about him today. But what can FAU fans expect, and what type of coach is FAU getting in Coach Zach Kittley?
Yeah, I've known Zach for. It's funny because I just got off the phone with his dad right before I was talking to you. His dad is a Hall of Fame track coach here at Texas Tech, and they've won multiple national championships. And Zach is somebody that's kind of been around Lubbock for a long time, and he started here when Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach. Cliff Kingsbury is now the OC for the Washington Commanders, and Zach kind of got involved with the staff back when Coach Kingsbury was here, and that's when a guy that I'm guessing most of your listeners or viewers would know, Pat Mahomes. And Patrick was that. So Patrick and Zach got really tight, and that's how Zach learned everything that he knows about offense was from Cliff and coaching Pat, and that was, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I guess it was. And but Zach is as good of a person and a family guy as he is a coach, and this is a bright guy that I'm a big Owls fan now. I can't wait to see kind of what he'll do. I hate for Texas Tech that they lost him, but this is the business. This is what happens when you put the kind of product that they did on the field this year and have a top 10 ranked offense and all that nationally. You're going to have some people that are interested in you, but yeah, Zach, and we can get into kind of scheme and
Yeah.
and all those kinds of things if you want, but yeah, Zach's he's a good man, and he's a younger guy, and I think that's kind of what FAU wanted. From what I gather, they wanted a young offensive guy, and he checks all the boxes there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the business, and when you have a such a solid offense like Coach Kittley has been able to coach, and it's clear that he has turned around offenses everywhere he's gone, from Western Kentucky to Houston Baptist to Texas Tech most recently. And you mentioned the top 10 offense, which had over 460 yards per game on average and scored about 38.6 points per game, nearly 39 points per game, which ranks top 10 in scoring offense this season. So, from your perspective, can you describe Kittley's offensive philosophy? How does he use his offensive play calling? Is he more of a pass heavy guy, a run heavy guy? Obviously, Texas Tech like to run it a lot this year. And does he lean on tight end motion, multiple running backs, or any other specific formations you see from him calling? So what's his just total offensive philosophy?
Yeah, JJ, I think that's a loaded question that needs some context. I think that a lot of this is going to be based on, one, the kind of quarterback that he's got. That's going to be the most important part. And then in tandem with that is what kind of offensive line that they have or can put together. But at his core, he's more of a guy that wants to be balanced, but maybe tilts more toward throwing the ball. But that's based on if you have the right quarterback and if you've got the right wideouts that you can throw to and all those things, and then if you've got the guys that can protect. The way Cliff, and this is how Zach learned it, but the way Cliff would coach offense is that they didn't necessarily major in any one thing because they wanted to be able to do a variety of different things week in and week out, because they wanted to be able to pick apart whatever weakness that a defense would have. So if the corners weren't good, or if the linebackers couldn't cover, or the defensive line wasn't very good, they wanted to be able to run it or use their quick game or throw it down the field and take shots. And he kind of majors in basically trying to have an answer for whatever kind of defense you're going to see. And that's kind of so here in the last couple of years, we had a phenomenal running back in Taj Brooks, and they utilized him a lot, and they were very balanced. I mean, this is this is an offensive branded school here at Texas Tech. And for the first time in school history, they had a 1,500-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver. I mean, they were very, very balanced. And I think if you ask me, what were they this year? That's what I would tell you. And it's like one played off of the other, because if they ever got the running game going, then they would start picking you apart with the RPO stuff and going down the field. And then the passing game came into play. And if you loaded up to stop the run, they would throw it down the field and try to loosen that up. And then the running game would hit you. So it was kind of one aspect of the offense played off of the other. And they had a great group of tight ends here. They have probably 2 tight ends that were seniors this year that probably will get a chance to play in the NFL. And so they did run a lot of what I would term 12 and 13 personnel, even some 14 personnel, which is, however many tight ends and then a running back, I think. So, but like when you go to his days at Western Kentucky, they were more 4 wide with one running back, kind of more of an air raid style, because that's the personnel that he had at the time. He didn't have a stud running back, but he had some really good receivers and a really good quarterback by the name of Bailey Zappi that ended up playing for the New England Patriots. And so, to me, this is a sign of a really good coach, JJ, is that he can kind of take what he's got and beat you in a variety of different ways. And it may look a little bit different year in and year out based on what he's got on hand. But this is what I would tell you about Zach Kittley. He won't care if you win the game 52-51 or if you win it 10-9. He is only worried about winning the football game. He wasn't a big ego guy at all. And so if it's because I'll just give you an example. A couple of years ago here, they went to Ames, Iowa and played in like really, really cold weather and won a game 14-10. And they're playing field position. They're running the ball. They're punting it when they need to. They're trying to pin the team back and just playing an old school cold weather football game. The very next week, they came back and beat Oklahoma in a shootout, 52-48 or something it was. So, and I just think he and both wins, but it's not, he won't get caught up into what it looks like. Now, I know Florida Atlantic hired somebody to light the scoreboard up, and there'll be a lot of offensive focus there, understandably so, but he wants to win. That's what I would say to you. But I think you'll see some balance. I can't pretend to know what the roster at FAU looks like, especially considering you've got to go through the portal portion and see who you can get in there and who's already there and quarterback wise, all that kind of stuff. So I think that, but he will figure it out. And he was excited about this opportunity, and I think you'll see a little bit of everything. You'll get trick plays at times. You'll get, he may line up, run some wildcat stuff. He ran some wildcat stuff here this year, including Taj Brooks and also including a tight end. He had a play where the tight end threw a pass. So there's always some gadgets. There's always, fun. And, but I think at the end of the day, it's a balanced, but he wants to be able to beat teams in a variety of different ways based on what their weakness is, but also based on what he's got to work with too.
Yeah, you mentioned the balanced passing and rushing this season, which is something that FAU fans should be very optimistic about because we've seen such heavy rushing throughout the last few seasons with very few pass attempts. Nearly 2,000 rushing yards for Texas Tech this season and nearly 300 passing yards per game through the air. So definitely a good balance between the two. You mentioned the ego, the low ego from him and him being a leader, Coach Kittley. What are some of his greatest strengths? Off the X's and O's, but more like a locker room guy. Have you seen him be a great leader? Has he brought new energy and elevated Texas Tech offensively in the locker room? And is that going to be a big key that he's going to help FAU with?
Yeah, he's a fiery guy, JJ. I mean, I think his players love him. I think it's specifically his quarterbacks. I think he has a great relationship with the kids that play for him. I think that it was a hard conversation, I think, for probably Zach to have with probably a guy like Baron Morton, who is the starting quarterback here at Texas Tech and has got one more year left. And that just speaks to the relationship that he had with his players and specifically his quarterbacks. And this business is what these guys are in. There's a lot of pressure. You hear a lot of positivity, but you hear a lot of criticism, and he really rolls his sleeves up and goes to battle with his guys, and I think they love him for it, and he loves them right back. But he is somebody that and it's funny because I'm like 6'5", 6'6", and Zach is probably 6'7", so he's a tall, skinny guy that you won't be able to miss on the sideline, but yeah, he is a sharp guy. And I can only imagine when he sat down with the administration and they start interviewing him that he would have been very impressive. And I mentioned a couple of guys already earlier, but I think when a guy like Cliff Kingsbury and a guy like Patrick Mahomes call on your behalf, that carries a lot of weight because Cliff has obviously been a head coach for the Arizona Cardinals, and now he's with the Commanders, and obviously Pat Mahomes is one of the faces of the NFL. But that's who Zach is. Those guys they will say whatever anybody wants to know about their guy, and it's fun to see some of those relationships because this stuff is hard, man. It's hard to win football games, and I think, but yeah, I think he's a player's coach, but he will want to win at the end of the day, and it won't matter necessarily what it looks like, but as long as you're winning, and I don't think you'll see some run heavy team anymore. I think that is. At most you'll see a very balanced attack on offense and run to set up the pass to set up the run. But yeah, you won't be seeing, some just, hey, we're just going to 3 yards in a cloud of dust, going to hand it off every play or anything like that. That's not who he is.
Yeah, and definitely that's great news for Owls fans to know that we're gonna have an explosive offense and put up points because it hasn't been that way the last few seasons. You mentioned earlier two guys, Patrick Mahomes and Bailey Zappi, two guys that were able to be developed in Kittley's offense. Kittley is definitely someone, Coach Kittley, who has had great turnarounds, turning around Western Kentucky from the 102nd ranked offense to second within 1 year, and coaching Patrick Mahomes as the QB coach with Texas Tech. So clearly he's able to have quick turnarounds and develop quarterbacks, specifically offensive players. But speaking of him being a great developer, something else you need as a head coach is to be able to recruit, specifically with the transfer portal and player retention being so hard these days. FAU already has 12 players, 12 starters actually, have entered the transfer portal. So, as a recruiter, is there anything in specific you've seen that we should be optimistic and happy about with Kittley so far? Because you, being able to get a team in the transfer portal is going to be our team this year with the amount of transfer players that we have and transfer starters in specific.
Yeah, JJ, I think well, he is a good recruiter. I mean, he's got. I think the one specifically at quarterback. That's where I think, because I mean the quarterback, we can argue this, I guess, but it's arguably going to be the most important position on the team and kind of going to decide a lot here, one way or the other. And he had one of the top quarterbacks in the country, is a true freshman this year on Texas Tech's roster, and Will Hammond. We saw some glimpses of Will Hammond this year. Everybody here is very excited about that, but that was Zach's guy. What I would tell you is that'll be the first thing I bet he's trying to, secure or figure out is who's going to be my guy. And I think that you can expect to see them go heavily in the portal, really to fill out not just quarterback, but the team in general. I don't think he will, take too many high school kids just because there's pressure to win and win now. I don't think you have time to sit with high school kids and take time for them to develop. You need guys that you can go get right now. And being in the state of Florida, you've got guys that maybe want to come back closer to home, or they've been overlooked by, whoever it may be. And he will, he will sort through that rather quickly. But yeah, they will try to, I think offensive line, quarterback, receiver, all that stuff will be at the top of the list for sure. And again, I don't know what is on campus right now and what Zach may be trying to keep. Maybe he's talking to some of those guys about, hey, get out of the portal. We'd love to still have you. Or, man, this things are going to be different around here, or whatever it may be. But he's a very good recruiter, yes. And he's got some guys here that speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned that four-star that he was heavily involved with, one of the top quarterbacks in the class. Something that FAU fans have been going crazy about is Texas Tech quarterback, I believe Jake Strong, has entered the transfer portal. Didn't get much playing time. However, he has seen a bit of on-field time at Texas Tech, and it did seem like he followed Kittley. He entered the portal just 2 hours after Kittley had secured a job with FAU, or at least the post announcement on social media seemed that way. So, can you tell us a little bit about Jake Strong or other Texas Tech players that have maybe didn't get to see their chance at Texas Tech, maybe didn't get much playing time, but entered the portal looking for more playing time and had a relationship with Coach Kittley, who could potentially be on FAU's roster next year and make an impact on the team?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of Texas Tech fans that wondered about Jake Strong as well. Jake was going to have a hard time playing here with Baron Morton coming back next year, and then obviously Will Hammond waiting in the wings. And Jake started a game at BYU last year. He was a true freshman. It was a tougher night for him, but it's a lot to ask to go play in Provo, Utah on a Saturday night, and when you're a true freshman, But Jake's a great kid. I would say that if I wouldn't rule that out at all, that Jake would go to Florida Atlantic. I think, though, that I would also add this to folks watching, listening, whatever, that I'd be willing to bet you he will try to find more of a proven quarterback, more of a sure thing. I could see Jake going there, but he wouldn't be the guy, I don't think. I think Zach will try to go find somebody that has already played or is ready to go right now. And maybe Jake can come in and compete with whoever this would be, potentially, if that's what Jake wants to do. Jake may want to stay closer to home in the state of Texas or something like that too. I wondered about. There's a receiver that hopped in the portal that's a senior named Brady Boyd that didn't get to play a lot this year. And I wondered if he would maybe be somebody that would follow Zach to Florida Atlantic. So, and it's still early with a lot of this. It's still early to kind of get a feel for how many of Tech's guys may get into the portal, but there's just a few that have. There's a corner. There's another receiver that's a very high profile kid by the name of Micah Hudson. But I would say, Jake Strong and Brady Boyd, that wouldn't shock me at all if that's where they ended up. But, I can't pretend to know what Jake and Brady ultimately want. They may want to stay closer to home. I don't know. But those guys could certainly help somebody for sure.
Yeah, and Owls fans remember the name. Chris said it first. Brady Boyd, and Jake Strong, if that's correct. Chris, watch out for both of them who recently entered the portal. Brady Boyd and Drake Strong being the quarterback. So two guys that we should definitely follow throughout their transfer portal. And Brady Boyd, as you mentioned, the wide receiver, redshirt junior, still has 1 year left of eligibility, and hopefully he and Jake Strong come to the Owls. So we've talked this entire time, Chris, and one of the things you've brought up multiple times is quarterbacks, and we talked about it. Patrick Mahomes, Bailey Zappi, and him possibly bringing in Jake Strong. But his reputation with quarterbacks, it may be one of the best as an offensive coach, position coach, as a QB coach, or offensive coordinator in total in the country. So you're there, you go to practices, you're at games. How does he work with quarterbacks specifically? And what is his scheme for developing them so much? Is he tough on them? Is he more of a players coach with them? Just talk about how you've seen him develop quarterbacks at Texas Tech.
Yeah, JJ, I would say that he's a guy that will expect them to know a lot. He will, if he trusts them, he will give them a lot of freedom. He wants to be on the same page with them. Obviously now with the helmet communication that you have, you can kind of do more during the game with them. But his system is, I don't want to say it's like complex, but he puts a lot on a quarterback, and that's the way he's always done it with Pat or Bailey or Barron here. I think that he wants them to give them the freedom to kind of check into a play, check out of a play, and that's all based on trust and how much that particular Tyler Shuck was a guy that he coached here for a couple of years too, that is now at Louisville, and they spend a lot of time in the film room together, and I think that he wants his quarterback to be able to run the offense from the field. And what I mean by that is give him some freedom to, it's hard to call the perfect play every time. So you've got to give the quarterback the ability to get your team out of a bad play and into a good one, or into a bad play and into a good one, vice versa, whatever. So I think that comes with, though, a lot of film study and trust and all those things. So you got to have a level of football IQ and intelligence to be able to play for him or to do well. I think that when he's looking for somebody too, he's going to want to make sure that at minimum they've got some athleticism enough to kind of extend the play. I don't think he's necessarily wants a quarterback that is a running quarterback per se, although he wouldn't rule that out. But you got to have some athleticism and ability to kind of move around in the pocket, or we can move the pocket on a called play, or you tuck it and go if that's what it takes. I mean, there was some zone read stuff this year that Baron Morton would take it and go, kind of would surprise the defense a little bit. Baron has the ability to move around. Tyler Shuck, in that Iowa State game I mentioned a few years ago, they were running QB power at the end of that game just to kind of wind the clock down, which is kind of an old school, kind of what Kansas State does at times. but and he's not a quick hook guy. He will be hard on the quarterback, but he's not going to be one of those guys where the first time they screw something up, he's going to yank him and all. That's just not how he is. He's, there's a level of patience, but it's based on trust and how much you've studied in the middle of the week to get yourself in a position to play good football on a Saturday afternoon.
It's going to be exciting what he can do with the next quarterback for sure, and love that he does show some patience and doesn't get super fired up for a mistake or two. So Chris is short on time here, but want to throw this question out at you. FAU is a program that recently has suffered a lot of negativity within coaches themselves. Going over to basketball, Coach Dusty May left for a Power Four opportunity at the University of Michigan basketball team, and just 5 years ago, Coach Lane Kiffin, who a two-time Conference USA champion in 3 years, had so much success with the football program, left for another Power Four job at Ole Miss. So I know this is a very loaded question. It's not that easy to answer, but Zach personally, or Coach Kittley personally, and obviously you talked to his dad. Is he somebody who you think is going to be a 1 year guy for FAU if they win 10 games? Or would you think that he wants to stay at FAU long term? Because you can't blame someone who wants to go to a Power Four job. It's just how badly does he want to do that? We've seen schools have Power Four head coaches and them leave to be offensive coordinators at other schools. One of the examples we saw today being Gus Malzahn, who left UCF to be the Florida State offensive coordinator. Is he going to be a 1 year and start looking for other jobs, or do you think FAU is going to have him for the full 5 year contract? Because we've seen a lot of coaches leave here recently for better opportunities.
Yeah, JJ, that is a loaded question. I would say this. I don't think Zach goes in there with any thought of like, I'm just going to be here for 1 year. I would strongly disagree with anybody that would suggest that. I think that all comes down to how quickly they turn it around and get rolling, and then at that point, what options are there? I don't think he would. I mean, he's somebody. He's a Texas boy. He's spent some time, like I said, in Kentucky. I just don't see him just leaving for that. That just depends on who comes calling, I guess, and then you get into finances and all those things. But I just don't think that he would want to live just anywhere. I think it depends on, who would be wanting to talk to him, like administration, like what's the situation there. I mean, there's a million things that a guy or a family has to consider whenever you start talking about bouncing around and all those things. But I just I don't think he wants to be a head coach. And I do the part of the radio broadcast for Texas Tech, and I had meetings with Zach every week for the last 3 years. And I can tell you this: he wasn't ever going to leave Texas Tech to be an OC somewhere else. It was always going to be a head coach. And I would say that unless it just didn't go well, and FAU in 2 or 3 or 4 years said, "Hey, man, this isn't working," I don't envision him going to be like leaving there to go be an OC, somewhere. Okay, I think he's going to be a head coach, and that's what he wants to do, and he wants to, call plays how he wants to, and all those things, and have some control and over his own future. So I don't know if I've answered your question right, but yeah, I do not envision him being like there in 1 year. And you know what? But though I'll say this for you guys' sake, I hope that he does go win 10 games in year one. I think that would be great for everybody involved, because that means you had a phenomenal season in 2025.
Yeah, and it is definitely a loaded question, but something Owls fans have had on their mind. You mentioned him not wanting to leave for an offensive coordinator job, and there were rumors that he was offered the Oklahoma offensive coordinator job at Texas Tech, in which he declined the Oklahoma offensive coordinator job because he wanted to be a head coach. Chris, I know we're on time constraints. Last one here for you, quick one. If there's one thing FAU fans should be most excited about with Coach Kittley, what would it be?
Yeah, and I'll tell you something about the Oklahoma situation. That I believe. Did he ever get offered that job? I can't say that for sure, but here's what I'll tell you: they reached out to his representation, and I think that you're right. It didn't go any further than that because that's just not what he was going to do. He's a tech guy. However, his protege, okay, the guy that learned under Zach Kittley at Western Kentucky, is a guy named Ben Arbuckle, who was at Washington State this year. And Ben Arbuckle took that job at Oklahoma. So that's kind of an extension of Zach Kittley that's now at Oklahoma. So I think that's pretty fascinating. And I think that as good as Ben is, I mean, he learned under Zach Kittley. So that is something that your viewers or listeners may want to be aware of. As far as what I would tell you, though, this guy is as genuine as anybody you'll ever come across. He's honest, he's genuine, and there's not a lot of that in the college athletics these days, or there's not enough of it, I should say. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I dealt with a lot of coaches, football and basketball wise, but Zach is a quality human, and that's what Florida Atlantic hired. And it's not a shock to me that he crushed his interview and they were like, okay, we found our guy because I think he's very impressive in that setting. Yeah, I think he's very genuine and honest. And when he's asked questions in the media, whether it be tough questions or fun questions, whatever, he's going to give you an honest answer. And there's not going to be any, he's not going to be rude or he's not going to be, I mean, he's just a fun guy to be around and he's very smart. And so you got an Owls fan in Lubbock, Texas, though, I can tell you that.
Chris, that is great news to hear. Having someone who is a respectable guy, someone who is a good role model with how good of how he is off the field. Great to hear that he is genuine and caring and will give you honest answers. So, definitely positive news for Owls fans. Seems like Brian White knocked the hire out of the park. Um, I, I believe so far, but we're about to see come the next season. And Chris, you're welcome anytime to Paradise. Now you're officially a Owl fan next year as well. We wish you the best of luck in finding a new offensive coordinator here. And yeah, very much so appreciate you coming on. That was some excellent insight. If you guys like the video, make sure you like it, subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you have any other questions or comments or concerns about the hire. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Take care and go Owls.